Live on connectonair.com and remoteradioweek.org.
Connect on Air.
Remote Radio Week proposes distinct programs in English, French, Spanish and Arabic, featuring experts, examples, debates and technical tips. UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. Get ready for a week devoted to helping radio stations broadcast remotely. Live on connectonair.com and remote-radio-week.org. UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021.
Welcome to 10 minutes focusing on good governance and human resources management during a time of crisis with or without remote work. A successful lifetime during a crisis, and especially when you have to have remote work, builds on all the core elements of good governance and a good organizational structure and culture that you have put in place before the crisis. But we will talk about that. So I will share my screen and let's get on with it. Good governance, sustainability, and human resources will be brought to you in the form of 5 expert tips. I am Birgitte Jallov, and I am based in Empower House, bringing together a lifetime of work in media development, in press freedom, and in making small local community media work effectively. I did that at first in my native Denmark when I was part of the first community radio station in 1983. And later I moved on with this work with media development and journalism in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, involving a lot of times, like here, training. Good governance, sustainability, and human resources have at the core people. And people in an organizational setting works better, more effectively when a systematic governance is in place. And all of this is at the core of being able to run a media entity sustainably. This is true in an ordinary time, and this is true during a time of crisis. So here are my 5 tips. First one is a shared vision and direction. Second important element is to have the leadership of the station in place and its organization, being transparent and accountable, building on trust and community identification that we are in this together. And I'll talk about being sustainable in a time of trouble. The first tip that I will share with you is a shared vision and direction. It is at the core of any good organizational culture, structure, development, and sustainability. After my Community Voices online course, a Zambian community station manager wrote to me. This course really came at the right time. I was 5 months in my new job as a station manager for community radio, which seemed to have no direction. I'm already using what I'm learning, and I can feel the difference. So without a shared vision and direction, you can ask, and everyone around you will ask, why are we here? For a station to function well, everyone needs to know where the station is going to be able to work on a shared vision. This is important at any time, and during a time of crisis in a remote setting, you will see the added benefit, added value of this clear direction of your station coming through. Secondly, your leadership of the station and its organization. For the leader to be able to lead, all need to understand who does what and why. This will unfold the potential of all. It will make the staff able to function also in a remote mode. And your leadership is not only about human resources management, it's also about your audience, about the community, about knowing who you are there to service, who you are producing for. This will help the programming, your leadership in the work of programming and the work of your people more precise during a crisis. When you work in isolation, you need to know who else are out there, who can I count on. You can do that through community mapping for a community station, or you can do other types of audience mapping and audience contact. Thirdly, being transparent and accountable. Running a community radio or any kind of radio is at the core about people, about your people at the station and at the people that you are producing and broadcasting to. The role is to serve, to respect, and to treat all people who are working at the station and who come to the station in the same way, with openness, transparency, human warmth, and correctness. And the more open and transparent you are inside the station, the less insecurity there is, the better everyone will work. Then there's an open, known atmosphere. And being accountable towards the community and the listeners, so that they can open your books if they like, makes you more effective during and not when outside of a crisis period. The fourth point is trust and community identification. This feeling that we are in this together. To be effective during a crisis situation with remote work, trust is at the core. Also, when there's no remote work, but when you are confined to produce in isolation, knowing who you are working with is important. During a crisis, there's much more anxiety and fear, both in your staff and also among the audiences. This is a basis for mis and disinformation, for conspiracies that you will hear about elsewhere in this remote radio week. And you need to build trust in order to overcome this, to be known, to be maybe not owned by the station, but to be known by the station, to use the language of your audiences, to build on the culture of the framework that you're operating within, to have references to the reality and to work with decency. And finally, being sustainable in a time of trouble. And being sustainable actually depends on tying together the 4 points that I've just shared with you. To have a clear direction and vision, that direction and vision is known by yourselves, the people at the station, by the audiences, and if you are dependent on advertisers or donors, they also need to know what you're all about and that you show it. And you show that through a strong leadership and management, with clarity of roles, knowing the audience, and when possible, having a relation with the audience. You need to be transparent and accountable based on all the values that all stations that I know about have in their strategic plan. It's being honest, it's working with clarity, working with openness, and decency, which is at the core and behind everything else. And all of this is a basis for trust and community identification. Sustainability has 3 core aspects. The social aspects, where the community engagement and the trust is at play. The governance that we have been talking about, with the leadership and the organization well in place. The financial area, which will be dealt with elsewhere, but here in terms of governance, it's about accountability and transparency. So these 5 expert tips is what I can share with you. And it is all about people, your people and the people around you. That is the basis for a good governance, and a good governance is a basis for people working well. And without all of this, you can't work sustainably. If this interests you and you would like to learn more about all of this based on my experience, you can read more about it in my book, Empowerment Radio, Voices Building a Community, which is a free online reader, and you can have the link here. This was all from me, Birgitte Jallov. 5 expert tips in the area of governance and human resources during a time of crisis. And I wish you a continued good remote radio week. Bye for now.
UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. Get ready for a week devoted to helping radio stations broadcast remotely. Live on connectonair.com and remote-radio-week.org.
Connect on Air.
UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. live on connectonair.com and remoteradioweek.org.
Connect on Air.